Now, these women must be either some of the dumbest criminals and really thought they can get away with what they did, or were so blinded in their rage and in their pursuit for a little payback that they really thought that there was not going to be any evidence of them colluding with each other. Absolutely ridiculous. Welcome back to this channel. My name is Mandy Magnan. I'm an actor, writer, producer, and director in Toronto, as well as a YouTube commentator on everything pop culture, movie reviews, and it ends with never. Today, we are only in this video going to be talking about Jen Abels' counterclaim to Stephanie motherfucking Jones. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Grab that emotional support lip gloss because we are getting into it. You are in frame with Mandy Magnan. Well, the day has come where VANZAN is back in the light, baby. Okay, and Jennifer Abels' counterclaim, not very long, but she does come with some new information. Some things are redacted, so we don't know exactly what's going on, but apparently there is evidence of Stephanie motherfucking Jones getting a hold of Blake Lively. For weeks they were talking to each other back and forth before that VANZAN sham lawsuit and subpoena ever got filed. Jaw is still on the floor, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Because finally, VANZAN is back in the light, and these ladies are about to be held accountable for some of the shadiest, unethical things that have ever happened in this case, and we are only here today because of the absolute shadiness of these bitter women. First, you have Blake Lively, who couldn't take accountability to save her life. Okay, her and her husband in maximum effort. The backlash was all because of their own behavior, but they couldn't handle it. Then you have Stephanie motherfucking Jones, who was so mad, seeking revenge on Jennifer Abel because she was leaving and taking Wayfarer with her. But that's only because Stephanie Jones was losing so many clients that year because she is allegedly crazy. Okay? They got together. I just can't believe, and they really thought they were going to get away with it. And the New York Times isn't out of it yet. Because if it turns out that the New York Times, and there is proof, that they went to the New York Times, and the New York Times was in any kind of conversation about them having to lawfully obtain these text messages, and they knew at first that it wasn't, that they were illegal, and then somehow got them to get this sham subpoena through VANZAN, that's a problem. That's going to be a problem for them too. Okay, it's a problem for all parties involved in VANZAN. Let's go over Jennifer Abels' counterclaim. We'll read the whole thing. A lot of it's kind of stuff that you already may or may not know. I've highlighted some of the most relevant parts, and when we get into the VANZAN, baby, just be ready. Okay, because okay, what? That's bananas. And I have a really soft spot in my heart for Jennifer Abel. Ever since I found out about her story and how this all came about and how they got all of her text messages and the way she was treated, oh my gosh, around that same time, I just know what it's like to stay at a place and put up with so much abuse and so much just disgusting treatment from higher ups because of money, because you love working there, because you love your job and your coworkers, and you just put up with so much. And then at the end of the day, when you finally leave on your own, this is what happens to you. And these are her private communications that were shared. Communications that Stephanie Jones had no business looking at, number one, but then sharing them with the opposition, which is Blake Lively. It's so insane. It's crazy. The fact that they kept the lawsuit open with John Doe's 1 through 10, even though they knew who they were going after, they didn't change it, and they didn't allow any Wayfarer party or Jennifer Abel, whose phone it was, whose private messages it was to even have the ability to try to get this quashed or have the opportunity to defend herself. It's disgusting. Here's the counterclaim. You do have a lot of the answers. The first 30 pages are answers to all of Stephanie Jones's points. So they're just answering pretty basic. We agree, we don't agree with this. We agree, we don't agree with that. The prayer for relief for Jennifer Abel is 1, that the complaint be dismissed with prejudice and plaintiffs takes nothing herein. 2, that judgment be entered in favor of defendant and against plaintiffs. 3, for cost of suit incurred in this action. And 4, for such other and further relief as the court may deem just and proper. Demand for jury trial. Defendant demands a jury trial on all causes of action. Let's go. It does go into the general allegations where it talks about who Stephanie motherfucking Jones is, how long Jennifer Abel worked for her. She's a well-known New York public relations PR person. Jones is married to Jason Hodes, a partner at WME. This is big. It's in here because, she tried to leverage WME in her relationship in WME to gain some kind of control, as well as, I feel like, in my opinion, threaten them a little bit. WME is Hollywood's most powerful talent agency. Between her perch atop JONESWORKS and his partnership at WME, Jones and Hodes are a bona fide Hollywood power couple. Jennifer Abel was working at another group for 12 years before Stephanie Jones tried to poach her away. In around late spring of 2020, at the height of COVID-19 pandemic, Jones, through a recruiter, reached out to Abel via LinkedIn about joining JONESWORKS. Although Abel was content at RNCPMK and not actively looking for a new job, Jones offered her a higher salary and, critically, the opportunity to lead her own team. When Abel announced her intention to join JONESWORKS, she was met with a parade of concern from across her professional network. An array of well-respected public relations professionals from across the entertainment industry reached out to Abel to caution her against working for Stephanie Jones. Jones, they warned, had a well-deserved reputation for treating people horribly. Jones had recently become embroiled in a dispute with another public relations firm for stealing its clients using deceptive and unscrupulous means. But excited for the opportunity to run her own team and do her thing, Jennifer Abel went. On or about July 9th, 2020, Abel was hired by JONESWORKS as vice president. Her mandate was to oversee JONESWORKS' talent department and grow its LA office, which at the time only had 4 employees. In connection with and as a condition of her employment, Abel signed a non-disclosure on intellectual property rights and non-solicitation agreement, the 2020 employment agreement. Abel was not represented by counsel in connection with the negotiation or execution of the 2020 employment agreement. The 2020 employment agreement provided that Abel was an at-will employee whose employment was exclusive to JONESWORKS during the period of her employment. It also contained a confidentiality clause pursuant to which Abel was required to maintain the confidentiality of and not disclose confidential information. As the term is expansively defined therein, provisions purporting to restrict Abel's ability to speak truthfully about her experiences at JONESWORKS and a host of restrictive covenants, including non-competition and non-solicitation covenants. The 2020 employment agreement also contained a California choice of law provision providing that it had made and shall be interpreted in accordance with the laws of the state of California without regard of conflicts of law principles. Within a few weeks of Abel's onboarding, JONESWORKS faced a mass exodus of employees in its New York office. While Abel was understandably concerned, Jones assured her that all the departing employees were horrible at their jobs and would be fired regardless. Little did Abel know that turnover of that magnitude was typical at JONESWORKS, which routinely faced large-scale departures by disgruntled and demoralized employees. What Abel quickly realized was that morale amongst JONESWORKS employees was outright abysmal, that such departures were invariably acrimonious, and that departing employees and current employees alike were extremely tight-lipped and fearful of discussing their experience at JONESWORKS. Abel observed that morale among JONESWORKS employees was inversely correlated with physical proximity to Jones. Thus, the LA office was generally a more positive environment than the New York office. Abel was also surprised to learn that despite its size, JONESWORKS lacked any HR department or dedicated human resource personnel. Jones instead relied on business affair personnel and her various chiefs of staff to handle any personnel-related matters, in part due to the lack of human resources department or grievance reporting structure and fear of backlash from Jones. JONESWORKS had a toxic workplace culture in which employees, lacking an outlet or meaningful recourse, constantly gossiped and complained amongst themselves and leaned on senior employees for solutions to workplace issues. Unlike most workplaces, JONESWORKS also lacked written internal policies, including regarding the usage of electronic devices or an employee handbook. At no point during Abel's employment did she see, hear about, or sign anything of the sort. The only terms governing Abel's employment were those set forth in her employment agreements. Because public relations jobs require extensive mobile phone usage, public relation firms often assume the cost of their employees' phone and phone usage. JONESWORKS was no exception. Then they talk about how Abel at first took her phone number, was assured she can have it back when she left, and was only using it for business. She had an Android and the offices used iPhone. Abel had no problem converting her phone number as long as she could retain ownership of her phone number and bring it with her when she should leave JONESWORKS. Although JONESWORKS owned the physical device, it was configured with Abel's personal Apple ID and populated with all of her personal email accounts, photos, text messages, third-party apps, etc. Abel had no concerns about using her JONESWORKS issued cell phone freely, and as her sole mobile device, as such practices are common in her industry, where pay can be low, but neither Jones nor anyone else at JONESWORKS advised her against doing so. JONESWORKS did not have any internal policies that prohibited such use, gave it to the right to monitor such use, or divested employees of a reasonable expectation of privacy in relation to such use. Thus, Abel had no reason whatsoever to believe that JONESWORKS' ownership of the physical device would or could in any way compromise her right to privacy in the personal data or accessible from it. JONESWORKS would not have any right to access or monitor, for example, her personal email accounts, text messages, photos, or bank accounts. In addition, Abel separately paid for additional storage for her personal data. Notwithstanding the continued large-scale departures from the JONESWORKS New York office, Abel quickly became a leader of the California operation. Within 2 years, Abel had grown the LA headcount from 4 employees to 12. All the while, Abel wore an array of hats, working tirelessly without a commensurate increase in compensation. On or about November 22, 2021, JONESWORKS required Abel to enter into a modified employment agreement, the 2021 employment agreement, changing her employment from an at-will to a contractual term, adjusting her title and compensation, and subjecting her to a variety of novel restrictions intended to deter her from leaving JONESWORKS and inhibiting her ability to remain in her chosen field if she were to do so. Abel was not represented by counsel in connection with the negotiation or execution of the 2021 employment agreement. The 2021 employment agreement, like its predecessor, contained an expansively drafted confidentiality provision as well as a host of restricted covenants, including non-competition and non-solicitation covenants. Unlike the 2020 employment agreement, the 2021 employment agreement contained a New York choice of law provision providing as follows. This agreement and the performance of the parties' obligations hereunder will be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of New York, without giving effect to any choice of law principles. At all times during Abel's employment at JONESWORKS, Abel was a resident of the County of Los Angeles, State of California, and based out of JONESWORKS' LA office, and confirmed the overwhelming majority of her work within the state of California. Abel has lived and worked in California for the entirety of her adult life since graduating from college. Abel has maintained virtually no connection to the state of New York. She has not lived there, maintained a residence there, performed any significant amount of work there, or even traveled there more than a handful of times. She was at all times a California resident and California employee entitled to the protections of the law of the state of California. Apart from infrequent business travel, Abel performed no work for JONESWORKS in the state of New York. It is clear that JONESWORKS required Abel to agree to a New York choice of law provision because it wanted the ability to bind her to restrictive covenants such as non-competition and non-solicitation covenants that would be void ab initio in California and to deprive Abel of the perfections of California substantive law. And the legal term for the ab initio is actually a Latin word. It's a phrase meaning from the beginning. So from the beginning, she kind of knew that it would deprive Abel of the protections of California law. By Abel's second year, Jones appeared to be deteriorating. Abel began to harbor increasing concerns about Jones's mental stability and ability to manage client and employee relations. At around the same time, Jones started making FaceTime calls to Abel and other employees at notably odd hours. Jones's communications frequently tracked through the night and into the next morning, suggesting that she had not been sleeping at all. Concurrently and unlike relatedly, Jones became noticeably more paranoid and irascible, often accusing Abel and others of plotting against her. It became more challenging to communicate with Jones, settle her nerves, or even track her train of thought. Due to extremely draconian NDAs, Jones's threats, and the climate of fear pervading past and present, JONESWORKS employees and clients alike, Jones's worst excesses were largely hidden from view until in or around May 2024, when Puck reported that Sanchez and Johnson had dropped Jones as their publicist. While they were among the most prominent and publicly reported departures, a cascade of JONESWORKS clients began cutting ties with Jones, especially after word spread that Business Insider was contacting Jones's former and current clients and employees about a forthcoming article about her sordid behavior. On May 8, 2024, a website called Stephanie Jones Leaks went live, along with an X.com account, a Facebook page, a Reddit account, and a Pinterest page. These platforms disclosed a litany of alarming allegations about Jones's behavior and business practices, many concerning Jones's mistreatment of JONESWORKS employees and clients. Abel had no involvement of any kind in the Stephanie motherfucking Jones leaks, okay? It says right here, zero involvement. And now that they've done all of the depositions and all of that, they know for a fact whether or not there's proof or she did it, okay? She's saying nothing, zero involvement. These revelations caused a firestorm in Hollywood, resulting in a surge of negative publicity regarding Jones, including the publication of the Business Insider piece, Who's Afraid of Stephanie Jones? Abel was not responsible for the Business Insider piece and learned of it for the first time from Jones herself in or around late May or early June 2024. The Business Insider piece shed more light on the real Jones, always a volatile personality. Jones had become noticeably more paranoid, erratic, and cruel in recent years. The Business Insider story also shed light on the toxic workplace Jones had fostered at JONESWORKS. At the office, Jones would regularly turn on deafening music so that she could berate her employees free from scrutiny. "I don't think there was one day in the office that someone wasn't crying," said a former employee. Jones also pried into her employees' private lives without invitation. She would FaceTime them if they called in sick. I mean, I've done so many videos on Stephanie motherfucking Jones now, but she would allegedly, if they're saying, "Oh, I have a funeral to go to, I need one day off," she would FaceTime them to make sure that they were at said funeral. Or if they called in sick, she would FaceTime them to make sure that they were actually home sick. As discussed above, but disclosed publicly by Business Insider, turnover rates at JONESWORKS were extraordinary. These departures included not only junior employees who often left after less than a year, but also senior executives who managed clients' accounts. Jones rarely allowed them to go amicably, often enlisting attorneys to threaten and intimidate them into agreeing not to disparage Jones. In April 2023, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson dropped JONESWORKS after clashes between Jones and Johnson's team. JONESWORKS had handled Johnson's personal PR, as well as that of his production company, tequila brand, clothing company, and business partner, Danny Garcia. That was one of the biggest losses for Stephanie Jones, because we all know the money that The Rock has with all of his hands in so many different businesses. In the following months, Jones was also dropped by Bezos, Sanchez, Lainey Wilson, Chris Hemsworth, Wheels Up, Ocean Spray, and Partake Foods. Through it all, Jennifer Abel remained loyal to Jones, sticking with her through thick and thin, despite growing doubts about Jones's ability to function professionally. By 2024, however, Jones had become increasingly embittered and hostile towards Abel. Jones frequently criticized Abel's management, manifested extreme paranoia about Abel's close relationships with clients and partners, and went out of her way to reprimand, demean, and embarrass Abel in front of junior employees she oversaw. Over time, Abel's concern about Jones's obvious downward spiral was heightened by the reality that there was no bottom in sight. In the final months of Abel's tenure, Jones had become even more erratic, clearly not sleeping, calling at all hours of the night in a frenzied state, senselessly pitting her own employees against each other, focusing her energy on catching employees in perceived acts of disloyalty, lowering morale still further, and torching her relationship with remaining JONESWORKS clients. Although Jones had always been volatile, she now appeared to be actively unraveling. Abel was frequently on the receiving end of her often bizarre outbursts. In one instance, Jones announced to Abel's subordinates that she had learned through her psychic frickin' readings that Abel was an alcoholic and a gambling addict. Even if these statements were true, Jones's public announcement would be at best highly inappropriate. Here, however, the accusations are not even remotely true. They have literally no basis in reality, and the employees to whom Jones made her pronouncements were well aware of that. While Jones presumably intended to undermine Abel's credibility, she had actually significantly undermined her own and raised alarms about whether Jones was in the midst of a mental breakdown. On a different occasion, Jones announced again, per her psychic, that Abel would soon be pregnant with twins. Humiliating and infuriating, because Abel, who Jones knew had struggled with fertility issues. So when y'all say, how can you be on the side of Wayfarer? You must hate women. Let's look at the women who are on the Blake Lively side for a second. because they don't seem like girls to me. They seem like mean bitchs. Okay, you feel me? This is absolutely unhinged behavior. And to even if you know that someone is having fertility issues, to even talk to anybody else about it, let alone you're the boss and she's your employee, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Disgusting. Abel was also disgusted by Jones's pattern and practice of creating fake social media accounts to troll employees and journalists she deemed hostile. So why do you think Blake Lively has it in her head of a smear campaign and that they're able to use bots and create fake social media channels and do all of this stuff? Again, projection, because that's exactly what they do. That's exactly what Stephanie motherfucking Jones does. That's why they thought for sure Wayfarer was doing the same thing. Like, we do it, they're going to do it, right? Every step of the way, it's always been them blaming Wayfarer for what they're doing, including Stephanie Jones went after, including Puck's Matt Baldoni. Jones was obsessed with Baldoni in particular. Abel also witnessed Jones working with journalists to plant and contribute to negative stories about former JONESWORKS clients who had fired JONESWORKS and Jones. When Abel requested that JONESWORKS offer its LA employees a modest 2% cost of living raise, Jones, who spent obscene amounts of money on lunches, champagne, manicures, told her that if that were to happen, it would have to come out of her own paycheck. Already pushed to the brink, Abel finally had enough. Finally, after everything, had enough when Jones demanded she corroborate falsified accusations about a senior JONESWORKS employee in an effort to drive him out. When Abel refused to go along with it, Jones responded with mockery, calling her a 12-year-old drama queen. Oh, so sorry that you don't want to lie and falsify accusations and bully this guy because you don't like him, that she's a drama queen. On or about July 10th, 2024, Abel notified Jones of her departure from JONESWORKS. Abel later confirmed her decision on July 26th and communicated her intention to start her own business. Abel offered a 6-week transition period ending on August 23rd, which JONESWORKS accepted. On August 7th, 2024, Abel contacted Jones's chief of staff, Gordon Duran, to coordinate the release of her phone number, as Jones had promised when Abel had first joined JONESWORKS several years before. Duran agreed, stating, redacted. And of course, Jones knew at the time that Abel had this phone number since high school. They talked about it, okay? It was her phone for a long time. She had it for text messages, friends and family, personal photographs. I mean, everything that you use your phone for, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff on it. At no point during her tenure did Abel consent to allowing JONESWORKS to access, review, or monitor the contents of the phone. JONESWORKS did not have a policy in place giving it the right to do so. Abel's willingness to let JONESWORKS port her personal cell phone number to its Verizon phone plan when she joined JONESWORKS was predicated on her reasonable expectation that she would retain sole and exclusive access to its contents and her private data and accounts. Had there been any reason to believe otherwise, Abel would not have agreed to the arrangement. Of course, I don't know anybody that would agree to that. Hey, yeah, you could pay for my phone and I'll go on your phone plan, but when I leave, you can have every single thing that I've ever done with this phone. That is insane. In early August 2024, Jones directed Duran to investigate how to gain access to Abel's text messages. Here we go, and it begins. So she already had a plan starting in August of 2024. Now, we have to remember, Abel wasn't walked out of the office, I believe, until the 21st. But in early August, Jones was already asking her chief of staff, Duran, how to gain access to all of her text messages and call history on her telephone from JONESWORKS' provider, Verizon. Duran was only able to obtain Abel's call and text logs for the prior 6 months. Jones instructed Duran to make sure that Abel could not port her phone number away from the JONESWORKS plan without JONESWORKS' permission. By mid-August 2024, Jones had hatched a plan to seize Abels' phone outright. She sent Duran to California on August 19, 2024, and set the plan in motion. Jones and JONESWORKS steal all of Abels' private data and communication. On August 21st, 2024, 2 days before Abels' last scheduled day of employment, Duran, a security guard, a forensic data technician employed by Edgeworth Security Services, and an attorney with Frankfurt, Kermit, Klein & Sells LLP confronted Abel at JONESWORKS' Beverly Hills office to terminate her JONESWORKS employment early. Jones had insisted on a security presence so that they could, redacted. Duran later testified that, redacted. I wonder what he testified to. That the plan was always going to happen, that she didn't have any security breaches on her phone, that she wasn't missing any of the documents. Because remember, Stephanie Jones is trying to say that Jennifer Abel stole documents from JONESWORKS, highly sensitive documents, and that's what they found on the phone. But in Jennifer Abel's first amended complaint, she said that the data technician searched her phone and her laptop in front of her and found nothing of the sort. So we'll see what Mr. Duran had to say in his deposition. During the August 21st meeting, Duran demanded that Abel hand over her phone and provide her passcode. In a ruse to induce Abel's compliance, Duran falsely claimed that JONESWORKS needed the passcode to facilitate the release of the phone number and reset the phone. Believing Duran's representations and intimidated by the presence of a large security guard, an attorney, and a forensic data technician, Abel complied with the demands. Abel did not consent to, and was not asked to consent to, a search of the iPhone's contents. Abel had no reason to believe JONESWORKS would attempt to access her personal data, or she would not have turned over the device without making prior arrangements to secure it. Abel sought and received express confirmation from Duran and the JONESWORKS attorney that her phone number would be released immediately thereafter. After handing her iPhone to the JONESWORKS attorney, Abel was escorted out of the office by the security guard. Abel went directly to a nearby Verizon store and called Duran with the Verizon representative to coordinate the transfer of the phone number. Duran told Abel that JONESWORKS had commenced the transfer and would call back. After 4 hours of waiting, Abel left the Verizon store in panic and despair. She never heard from him again. JONESWORKS never released the phone number. Through their promise to release Abel's phone number upon her August 23, 2024 departure, JONESWORKS had lulled Abel into a false sense of security. Believing she had 2 days remaining, Abel had not taken any steps to remove her personal data and information from the phone. When she arrived at the office on August 21st, she did so with a fully loaded personal iPhone, logged into all of her accounts, registered to her iCloud, and containing all of her photos, text messages, and emails. By refusing to release Abel's phone number, JONESWORKS usurped Abel's digital identity and cut off her access to critical accounts protected by two-factor authentication. As a result, Abel lost access to bank accounts, utilities, insurance, and virtually every other sensitive account. In effect, Jones had orchestrated a wholesale theft of Abel's phone number and personal data. It took months of endless phone calls and in-person visits for Abel to regain access to her checking and savings accounts, credit cards, investment and retirement accounts, as well as her internet, gas, and electricity accounts. In fact, Abel does not have access to her Empower 401k accounts to this day. She also lost 20 years of contacts, including those of her old friends, former clients and colleagues, and extended family. Abel had to reset all of her airline, loyalty, rideshare, and food delivery accounts, and for each social media account, Abel had to go through an intensive identity verification process. In short, what a nightmare. This is insane. This is insane. Like, Stephanie motherfucking Jones needs to pay for this. How do you put someone through this and still sleep at night? By contrast, Jones gained unrestricted access to everything stored on Abel's phone, her text messages, emails, and personal photos. Jones could read her communications with her fiancé, parents, friends, everyone, to ensure she would retain Abel's data under any eventuality. Then it's redacted. I want to see what this says. The next day, using her new phone number, Abel begged Duran and Jones to relent. Then this text message is so heartbreaking to have to beg someone who you gave years of your life to, built their business up, you go on your own, and this is the treatment that you get. It's so wild. This is the text message that she had to send to these freaking monsters. Steph Gordon, this is Jen Abel, my new cell. I'm writing you both as a personal plea to please release my cell phone number. This is the same number I've had since high school. This isn't a work-related thing. This is my personal number that is linked to all of my bills, my medical, Chris's dad's living facility, all of my personal emails and accounts, and due to two-factor authentication, I can't access anything. Gordon, you wrote me numerous times you were going to release this, and then when Verizon was calling you during the 4 hours I was there yesterday, you never picked up. You said you never even started the process after you told me you did. The lawyer I was ambushed with yesterday even said this was fine to do. I've been nothing but good to you both, but this is just mean and egregious, and I'm begging you to please release it before I travel tomorrow, please. You have no use for a 904 number that has been my personal number before you took on the billing. It takes one phone call. Please. After usurping control of Abel's private communications, this is so heartbreaking, Jones began exploiting them to harm Abel further. Specifically, Jones skewed Abel's text messages to find instances where Abel had privately been critical of or gossiped about any former JONESWORKS colleagues and shared them with those individuals and others. As a result, Abel saw long-term professional and personal relationships fracture. And there's proof. Jennifer Abel writes, just know that whatever she, as in Stephanie Jones, whatever she is telling you guys about me or what I've done, it's not true. I've enjoyed working with you both and wish you nothing but the best. And the former JONESWORKS colleague wrote, unfortunately, your company phone says otherwise. Like, we've all, I think, had a little chitty chat about some of our colleagues. Doesn't mean that we don't wish the best for them. Some days are a little bit stressful. Some days you're here, you're there, You say some things to the people that you trust, especially when it's in private and you have an expectation of privacy. It's just heartbreaking. JONESWORKS senior executives were positively gleeful as they watched Abel's closest colleagues turn against her. Among the communications reviewed, discussed, and disseminated by Jones and her cohorts were highly intimate messages between Abel and her friends about their sex lives. Then there are some redactions. This exchange, along with many others of a similar personal nature, are no longer in the exclusive possession, custody, and control of Abel and those she intended to communicate with, as they should have remained. Instead, they were widely distributed by Jones to her team, to Lively, to the press, and to untold others, and ultimately Bates stamped and captured for posterity in this and the related litigation. Also stolen by Jones were Abel's communications with her long-term partner and fiancé, as well as her parents. These include discussions between Abel and her fiancé about Abel's fertility, and between Abel and her parents about her mother's serious health challenges. Some of these messages, which Abel does not even have due to the theft of her phone number, were produced by JONESWORKS in this litigation. So she doesn't even have control or knowledge. She doesn't even have these text messages, but JONESWORKS is able to produce Jen Abel's personal text messages in this litigation too lively too, because you know whatever is in discovery for one has to be in discovery for all. Reams of other sensitive messages were excluded from JONESWORKS' document production, but clearly are, or at least were, in Jones's possession. This cannot be reasonably disputed, given that Jones directed her digital forensics team to copy Abel's phone in its entirety, which they did. Based on the evidence, right? Something that the other parties don't have. Based on the evidence thus far in this case, Jones closely, even maniacally, inspected these materials. In doing so, Jones attained unvarnished visibility into the most sensitive and private aspects of Abel's life. Her fertility struggles, her fiancé's father's neurological decline, and her financial situation. Jones also obtained all of Abel's personal photos, which run the gamut in subject matter, but were almost invariably not intended for the consumption of Jones, Lively, or any other hostile actors. Who could that be? Ryan Reynolds? Not only did Jones steal communications of a personal nature, but she also stole privileged communications between Abel and Jessup regarding Abel's new business. Jones did so knowing full well that Jessup was Abel's attorney. Do you know how bad that is? And there's some redacted parts, so they have evidence that she did this. In sum, Abel was subjected to a boundless and disgraceful invasion of her privacy by Jones and JONESWORKS. She has been left aghast, humiliated, and terrified. Having torched Abel's privacy and dignity, Jones started boasting internally that Abel's business would not last long. Then we go into the Wayfarer Baldoni account, which we already know. Wayfarer was part of the JONESWORKS for 4 years. However, Abel was always the one to work on the account. It was very, I guess, known that Stephanie motherfucking Jones didn't want anything to do with Wayfarer or didn't want to run the account or anything like that because they were like a lower end client, which I think is kind of crazy because they were paying her like over $20,000 a month. And that's a lower end client. In all total, Wayfarer paid her over $1 million. Okay. So, but at all times while they were with JONESWORKS, Abel was the point person on the account. Okay. But as you know, Stephanie Jones started to leak clients and lose them like this. She was losing everyone. She was in utter turmoil by July of 2024, and she was desperate to keep her remaining clients. At the time, Wayfarer and Baldoni were in the midst of the massive PR crisis as news stories began to trickle about speculating, the tension between Lively and Baldoni and how he fat shamed her and how he lingered on a kiss and how the whole cast unfollowed him on Instagram, right? As that was all happening, Jones then and only then started participating in meetings, calls, and written correspondence to reassert her authority over the account and convey her engagement to Wayfarer. Then they go into how they came about the Melissa Nathan thing. So Wayfarer asked Jennifer Abel to find them a PR specialist. After consulting with Stephanie Jones, she had no ideas of who they can hire, so Jennifer Abel gave them a list of people. Out of that list, one of them was Melissa Nathan. Stephanie Jones doesn't like Melissa Nathan. Melissa Nathan is competition for Stephanie Jones. They don't like each other, okay? It is what it is. Stephanie Jones did not want them to hire Melissa Nathan. She felt very strong about it, okay? Everyone knew that Jones was very unhappy about the Melissa Nathan coming in. However, Wayfarer told Jones that they're looking for a PR crisis manager. They're going to interview a bunch of people, and at the end of the day, it's their decision on who they're going to hire. Abel feared backlash from Jones, but felt strongly that Nathan was the best option. When Jones learned that Wayfarer was considering retaining Nathan, she was furious and immediately lashed out at Abel, pressuring her to disparage Nathan as a demonstration of loyalty to her. After initially pushing back, Abel eventually relented after Jones called her, crying and screaming, and engaged in some light disparagement of Nathan to placate Jones. Jones then attempted to derail the engagement and exploited confidential client information to dissuade Wayfarer from moving forward with Nathan. While Heath, Wayfarer's CEO, acknowledged Jones's position, he told her he would make their own decision after meeting with Nathan. Jones inserted herself into the mix in early August 2024, seeking to box out Nathan and Abel. The problem, however, was that Jones had chosen not to pay attention to Wayfarer's leadership's communication strategy or internal decision-making, having long claimed to be too busy with high-profile clients. Wayfarer was fine with Jones's disengagement, as Abel was their trusted advisor, and they had no interest in being a pawn in JONESWORKS' office politics. In addition, Jones chose to take a lengthy vacation in Europe during this critical period of the press campaign and premiere of the film. Even from afar, Jones's efforts were ham-fisted, unwelcome, and sporadic given her distance from Wayfarer's day-to-day business. As Jones tried to stir up drama and undermine Abels' authority, Wayfarer and Baldoni focused solely on managing the crisis at hand. Notwithstanding Jones's general disengagement, it is not true that she was kept in the dark. To the extent that she was out of the loop, it was by choice. Jones was copied on virtually all communications during this period and was privy to Wayfarer's predicament and its chosen strategy for non-confrontation. Had there been a smear campaign, as was later alleged by her and the Lively parties, Jones was undoubtedly would have known about it in real time. Then there's some redactions. What I feel like is it's obviously an email with Stephanie Jones, and that was in August 21st of 2024. Admitted Jones in an email. Okay, so she admitted something, that she knew something was going on. And they're saying that the Lively parties are Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, Leslie Sloan, and Vision PR. At the time, Lively and Baldoni's team had negotiated an uneasy truce in which neither side would participate in negative coverage of the other. Lively's team had already broken that truce by 9 minutes, okay? But the Wayfarer team did not know that. But on August 8th, 2024, Jones, in another desperate attempt to reinsert herself, contacted a Daily Mail reporter about a story they had published about Baldoni and Lively. She did so in direct violation of Wayfarer's instructions not to talk to the press, given the truth with Lively's team. Nonetheless, Jones bragged to Wayfarer about trading calls with the Daily Mail in an effort to appear engaged on the account. Nathan and Abel were left to deal with the fallout. This blatant disregard of Wayfarer's strategy sparked a chain of unfortunate developments. Sloan and Sony learned that purportedly someone from Baldoni's team had been communicating negatively to the media. When Wayfarer's leadership found out, they were livid. As with Sony, all parties were desperate to prevent an all-out slugfest between Lively and Baldoni, just as the film was about to be released to the world. Right, they want everything to be Gucci. The movie's coming out. With her reckless and unauthorized activity, Jones had made that scenario much more likely. In response, Wayfarer instructed Jones to cease all activities on its and Baldoni's behalf for the time being and let Abel and another Los Angeles-based JONESWORKS employee, Matthew Mitchell, handle the crisis alongside Nathan. At this time, Nathan started hearing from other journalists that Sloan was planting negative stories about Baldoni. Blake Lively's publicist was still planting negative stories about Justin Baldoni and was under the impression that Baldoni's camp had broken the truce. Anxious Sony executives began reaching out to Wayfarer seeking clarity. Yet Jones, panicking about being blamed, refused to be sidelined, insisting that she needed to contact Sony's and Lively's PR teams to clarify that she had not planted any negative stories about Lively. Heath told her not to do that, to which Jones responded that she can do whatever she wants to clear her name and that Wayfarer could not stop her from making calls. Desperate to salvage her reputation with Lively and Sony, Jones emailed several key Sony executives working on the film to declare that she was in Europe with her husband, partner WME Jason Hodes, and to place all blame on her team. Wow, what a leader. What a great owner and manager. Just blame it on her team. In her attempt to save face, Jones ruptured her relationship with Wayfarer and Baldoni. Although Jones ultimately agreed to stand down, Wayfarer and Baldoni expressed that they had lost all trust in her. After parachuting in for self-interested reasons, nearly blowing up their truce with the Lively's team, and lashing out when told to stop, Jones became a magnet for drama when it was least needed. As September drew near, Wayfarer and Baldoni, with the assistance of Abel and Nathan, continued their tireless efforts to promote the film, put out fires, and see the project through to the finish line. Stewing in jealousy towards Abel and the resentment towards Wayfarer and Baldoni, Jones clearly saw the writing on the wall. Knowing she would soon be terminated, Jones started taking steps transparently intended to make it harder to cut her loose. Those steps included sending emails after unwelcome email to Heath and others, long after their relationship was irrevocably ruptured, to lay the groundwork to contest that she had been detached and non-responsive for years. This was especially galling, as Jones had been in Europe and largely incommunicado, save for a few texts of support to Baldoni prior to the premiere, and then her disastrous efforts at self-preservation for weeks during the critical month of August when the film premiered. In contrast with Abel, who was loyal, trusted, and even-tempered while working around the clock through the crisis, Jones was a walking disaster whose self-absorption, disloyalty, and insubordination had become a significant headache. Rather than accept the end of the Wayfarer relationship with professionalism and decorum, Jones started threatening to sue, demanding exorbitant payment for work not done, and protesting that she had done an amazing job. Jones stewed in resentment and indignity. Unable to bear the loss of another JONESWORKS client, she set out to take revenge on Abel, Wayfarer, Baldoni, and Nathan. Jones disclosed at least some of Abel's private communications to the Lively parties no later than August 21st, 2024. Sloan, Lively's publicist, confirmed as much to Nathan on a phone call that evening. Despite lacking Abel's consent to access, review, or disseminate these communications, Jones and JONESWORKS were able to do so without difficulty because, the iPhone in hand, they could bypass the password protection that would otherwise bar their access. On or about August 24th, Jones took things a step further and attempted to contact Lively directly through a mutual connection. Remember, Jennifer Abel was walked out on the 21st. By the 24th, Stephanie motherfucking Jones was desperate to contact Snake Lively. There's a whole bunch of redactions here, but this has to be coming from the depositions and the evidence that they've received. A few days later, Jones again reached out to somebody, then connected Jones and Lively directly in advance of the call, redacted. So they were working together since August of 2024. Stephanie motherfucking Jones and Blake Lively were in it together. And I think Stephanie Jones probably put all of these ideas in Blake Lively's head. Reeling from a storm of negative publicity, Lively instructed, redacted. Lively and Jones spoke by phone approximately a week later, redacted. A few days later, Lively followed up with, redacted. However, it is well known that Jones transmitted the contents of Abel's iPhone to Lively, who in turn disseminated them more widely, including to the New York Times. While the contents of Abel's communications do not support the existence of an untraceable smear campaign, they do show that by the time of the film's premiere, Abel and others in Wayfarer's circle held Lively in deep disdain and vented amongst themselves. These sentiments were the natural result of the Wayfarer party's first-hand knowledge of Lively's vicious behavior and malignant persona and the high-stress situation in which they found themselves. Yeah, and they were actually a lot nicer to Blake Lively than I would have been in any of those freaking text messages, okay? Any of them. The only thing they can find Justin Baldoni saying about Blake Lively is she's a person that always thinks she's right. Okay. In turning over these materials to Lively, Jones knew full well how they would be used, with slicing, dicing, cherry-picking, messaging, and in some cases, outright alteration. The Lively parties exploited Jen Abel's text messages to great effect. Joining forces with the New York Times, the Lively parties commissioned the hit. However, for different reasons, the Lively parties on the one hand and JONESWORKS on the other needed to create a veneer of legitimacy. The Lively parties likely anticipated or were told directly that the New York Times would not traffic in stolen communications under these circumstances and needed the color of law. Jones and JONESWORKS, for their part, wanted to insulate themselves from legal exposure to Wayfarer for breaches of confidentiality. I'm so happy that they're calling them out here because that's exactly what happened. You had JONESWORKS who need to protect herself, and then you also had Blake Lively who couldn't give these text messages to the New York Times without it being in some way some color of law. Accordingly, on September 27th, so now it's been a month since Jones was able to be in contact with Blake Lively. Working hand in glove with Jones and JONESWORKS, the Lively parties and their counsel at Manat, Phelps, and Phillips initiated a sham legal proceeding in New York State Court, VANZAN Inc. versus Doe's 1 through 10 inclusive. So they're calling out Jones, the New York Times, Blake Lively, and their counsel at Manat, Phelps, and Phillips. The sham lawsuit was nothing more than a transparent ploy to obtain subpoena power. The plaintiff, VANZAN Inc., is a corporate entity affiliated with Lively and Reynolds and entirely unrelated to the film or the Wayfarer parties. The lawsuit asserted 3 causes of action: breach of contract, breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and faithless servant against Doe defendants only. It does not explain how or why VANZAN was unable to identify the proper defendants, which is especially notable in the context of a breach of contract. Right. How do you have a breach of contract with someone and you don't know who the contract's with? That's unethical. That's shady. Instead, VANZAN, Lively, and Reynolds and Manat implausibly claim not to be privy to the identities of its own contractual counterparties or its own employees, contractors, agents, or representatives. The lawsuit is devoid of specific allegations against anyone, much less Abel, and relies exclusively on boilerplate legal jargon. Notably, VANZAN never requested the assignment of a judge, substituted the Doe defendants for named parties, or served the complaint on any defendant. The only docket entries are the complaint and a notice of dismissal filed on December 19th, 2024, the day before Lively filed her CRD complaint against the Wayfarer parties. The same day the lawsuit was filed, September 27th, Jones warned a departing employee not to work for Abel because her business wouldn't be around much longer. Once the lawsuit was filed, the Lively parties used it to issue a subpoena to JONESWORKS for data stored on Abel's iPhone. including troves of private emails and text messages picked up via the application of highly generic search terms. The information turned over to Lively included communications that were plainly protected by the attorney-client privilege. Since there are no identifiable parties and no party had been served, the subpoenas were issued without notice, depriving Abel of any knowledge of the subpoena, much less the opportunity to object. Abel is informed and believes, and based thereon alleges, that the sham lawsuit was contrived by the Lively parties and Jones, acting in concert to facilitate and cover up Jones's release of the data extracted from Abel's phone and personal accounts under the guise of legal process, without risking detection by interested parties such as Abel, who could have intervened to stop the flagrant abuse of process. Abuse of process. That's what it was. As planned by the parties upon receipt of the sham subpoena, on or about October 1st, 2024, Jones and JONESWORKS blithely surrendered the entire contents of Abel's iPhone communications for a second time, creating a veneer of legitimacy and affording Jones and JONESWORKS plausible deniability once the New York Times came through for Lively. It is on this pretext that Jones and JONESWORKS counsel later described responding to a court-ordered subpoena. And Jones put in her claim, like, she must have said court-ordered and legal subpoena like dozens of times. As a result of Jones's malicious scheme, Abel's life has been turned upside down. Her career and reputation have been destroyed, her private information leaked, and her email box and social media pages filled with a daily stream of death threats and abuse. She has watched her client list evaporate and the viability of her once promising business cast into doubt. Abel lost control of her longtime phone number and along with it access to her most sensitive accounts and decades worth of contacts. Only after months of chaos and hundreds of calls with untold numbers of customer support representatives did Abel restore some semblance of order in her life. The backlash against Wayfarer and Baldoni have been equally devastating, with Baldoni wrongfully labeled as a sex pest, his accolades rescinded, and his future projects thrown into doubt. In an unimaginable invasion of Abel's privacy and dignity, Jones possesses and controls the full contents of Abel's iPhone, including her text messages, emails, and photos. Abel lives in fear with what is to come, given the vast troves of personal data in the possession of this hostile and vengeful actor. As a result of Jones's and JONESWORKS' tortious conduct, Abel has suffered enormous harm to her personal and professional life. All of this harm has accrued in the state of California, where Abel lives and works. Then it just goes into all of the causes. So violation of the California Penal Code, conversion, promissory fraud. Hello? She promised to give the phone. And yeah, we'll see. They are demanding a trial. And they have proof that Blake the Snake Lively was working for over a month with Stephanie motherfucking Jones. And Duran, the chief of staff, confirmed so much that Stephanie Jones was trying to get into Jen Abel's phone since the beginning of August. What more do you need? This is absolutely disgusting behavior. I couldn't even imagine going through something like this. The expectation of privacy, and then full well knowing that your boss, like this other woman, took the contents of your phone and gave it to someone like Blake Lively and Leslie Sloan and Ryan Reynolds, and then aired it in the New York Times, and then cherry-picked what they wanted, didn't include so many other things, and put it in the New York Times. Disgusting. But that's it. That's the counterclaim. Now we'll see. Stephanie Jones has to reply. Her replies are always snarky and like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't do anything. You're the reason why we're here, Stephanie motherfucking Jones, okay? That's the counterclaim. In the next video, I'm going to be going over the entire Friday dump because so many other things got filed on Friday night, and we're going to go over it. But drop your comments on what you think here. What do you think of the counterclaim? Do you think it's enough? And do you think that these causes are going to stand up in Judge Lyman's court, or is he still going to throw some of them out? I mean, I think now they have enough evidence. People are admitting to things that she didn't have actual proof to before, and she can prove that Lively and Jones worked together. We'll see what the judge has to say and what Stephanie motherfucking Jones's response is back. Catch me in the next video. We'll go over all of Friday night's dump. I love you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.